Here because if I need it. Hi, everyone. I've got a cough drop in my mouth because I just spoke for the last hour and now I feel like I'm losing my voice. So I'm going to do my best here. I've got my water. We'll see how this goes. Welcome, everybody. For those of you who were with me at my last talk, the one thing you need to know about surviving child loss, welcome back. If you're just joining, I am Emily Graham. I am both a bereaved mom and a grief coach at After Child Loss. I empower other bereaved parents with the tools and the support that they need in order to pick up the pieces after the loss of their child and take that next step forward. Today, I am going to be taking you through a workshop that will entirely focus on the idea of rebuilding a life after loss and what that looks like and how we really do this. So it's called My Child Died, Now What, right? I think that pretty accurately describes what happens to us. When I first became a mom and I was sent home with a newborn baby, right? I was shocked at the lack of education that I received, right? They bundle up this newborn baby, they send them home with you, and you're not told how to keep that baby alive. There's this phrase that is said in motherhood all the time. I know it's always said at the end of a really hard day, but they will say, at least I kept the baby alive, right? At least I kept the kids alive. And it's one of those things that I used to chuckle at that statement. And that's one of the things that hits different now because I'm the mom that couldn't keep my kid alive. And there's a lot of guilt in child loss. I'm sure, regardless of how your child died, you feel that guilt. And it makes sense. We take on the role of protector, of nurturer, right? And when our child dies, it feels like we failed them. What I found, though, is that's not necessarily guilt that we're carrying. It's really more like regret, disappointment, right? This isn't a workshop today on guilt. I do have one of those, so go check out my free resources later and you can watch through that. The reason that I share this is because child loss is a beast, and there is so much in this experience that hits you in a way that you didn't expect it to, that others really can't understand unless they've had it happen to them. There isn't anything that can adequately prepare you for your child's death, right? What comes after? There's nothing that can prepare you. Climbing out of this deep, dark hole, figuring out how to live again, it's going to be the hardest thing that you've ever done. And the tools that I share today as we go through this workshop, they're really things that I've pulled from various workshops and trainings that I've done. And my goal is just to help you have a couple of exercises that maybe you can do that will help you start to think about what that looks like. My firstborn child, my son, Cameron, he made me a mom. And he taught me unconditional love because nothing I had ever felt before he was born even seemed to compare. He made me brave. He was my little buddy, right? We explored life together. We went way out of my comfort zone, and he was really a mama's boy at heart. And if you were with me in last hour, you heard a little bit of my story. So I'm just going to give some highlights right now. When my son was 7, he unexpectedly got sick. It was Christmas Eve, and 24 hours later, we were withdrawing life support, and my son died. What I didn't share over there was that it took us 7 months to get answers. We learned that he had an extremely rare blood disorder called porphyria, an over the counter medication that I administered that night from a cold. He just had a basic cold that should have been safe, that doctors told us to give to him, was the thing that kicked off the attack that ended his life. We also discovered through that process that not only did my son have it, but so did my husband, and so did both of my daughters. And it was a lot. If you've lost a child, and I'm assuming that if you're watching this right now, you have. So you get it when I say I didn't really feel like living after child loss or finding a way forward or healing, right? It took a very long time for me to feel like I was figuring this out. And I think that's a lifelong thing that we keep doing. And just as I said that I was shocked that there was no baby manual when they sent him home from the hospital as a newborn, we had even less direction or support telling us what comes next when they die. We had no clue, right? Our world went completely dark. Everything spiraled out of control. I really didn't know how anybody at all could be expected to make it through this, right? You guys know that. You've endured a lot yourselves in your own stories. And when we talk about grief coming in waves, they really should call them tsunamis. And they just keep crashing over and over again, right? Sometimes with no room to breathe. Yet there's this expectation that we have to keep going, that we have to be strong, that we have to live for our other children, for our family, for our friends. We have to move forward. We have to find a way. Yet again, there's no manual that tells us how to do that. Just the other day, someone said to me that they were told that this happened. Now we need to figure out a way to move past it. There's a really big gap between it happened and moving past it, right? And there isn't anything out there that tells you how to make that happen. So today, the guidance that I'm going to provide for you guys again will hopefully help you. It's some of the things that I did to forge my own path forward, and I want you to be able to do that for yourself as well. One of the biggest mistakes that I see parents making, I know because I made it myself for a really long time, is trying so hard to fit back into the life that they used to live. And I get it. It's what we know. It's what we think we should do. We want the comfort and the security of that life and what we had. But really what it does is it creates a lot of extra struggle for us. When I talk about this, I like to provide a visual because a visual is always way more powerful than just talking about it. So we're going to use some Play-Doh, and I'm going to give you a visual for this. This is a typical container of Play-Doh, right? I want you to think about the container is your life. Inside here, right, we have Play-Doh, and you can see it's perfect, right? This is a brand new thing of Play-Doh. It's smooth. All the sides are perfect. See how easily it fits into its life? Like everything is perfect. And I know when you think back on your life that you had before, it doesn't matter if you had problems. We all have problems. But I'm sure you look back on that life and that life was perfect. Now, when your child dies, every single thing in your life is touched. Every single thing is completely destroyed. And you no longer are yourself, right? what we try to do, even though we are so changed, is we try to put ourselves back into that life that we had before. But the problem is that doesn't work, right? We don't fit anymore. And if you noticed, I have pieces falling off all over. You have stuff that goes away. You have all this stuff that's hanging out that doesn't fit, that doesn't make sense. You've got all these spaces in here where things used to exist. And no matter how hard you try, no matter how much pressure we apply to ourselves, you are not the same. This does not feel the same. This doesn't necessarily work, right? So we keep trying to do this though. And as I said in the last hour, if you were over there, this isn't something that we just move on from, right? No matter how much I wish that I could just give you a checklist and just tell you, go do these things. There's not anything that I can give to you that is just going to be your precise roadmap. But we do have two choices. And number one, we can stay here, right? We can keep doing this. We can try to stay here and make this work and fight against the grief and fight against all of the things that feel wrong in our life. Or we can figure out how to do things in a different way. One that helps us release some of the struggle, some of the pain, some of the things that make this so hard to show up for, and we can really start to take our life back. It took me a few years to be ready to make the decision, but I chose number two. And I knew that if my son were standing right here in front of me, he would tell me that he wanted me to be living again, right? He would want me to be living the life that he knew, the life he remembered, the life he loved. And since I couldn't do exactly that, right, I chose the very next best thing. And I chose to rebuild a life I could show up for and live. One that I know he would be proud of me for creating, and one that is ongoing, right? It's always evolving. And I continue to work on creating what I want that to be. Everyone talks about rebuilding life after loss or finding their way forward, but what does that really mean? Can you even put words to it? It's kind of like that gap that I mentioned before, right? How do I get from where I am today to the life that I need or want to build, right? Especially when I have no idea what that looks like in between. How do we even begin to wrap our brain around living without our child? In order to create a more concrete definition and to get us to a place where we can understand that, we need to be able to take a slightly different approach. And in order to achieve change, we need to remove some of the ambiguity, right? We need to be able to see things a little bit clearer. To do that, we are going to work backwards. And so that's kind of what I'm going to take you through in this first exercise. So here's the first question that I'm going to ask you to think about. If you want to share your answer, feel free to put it in the chat. I'd love to see it. And what I want you to think about is when you think about finding a way forward after a loss like this, what is it that you most want or need in that life? What is it that you're seeking? What is it that you're hoping for? Again, this is it's a big question, right? You might want to grab a piece of paper so that you can jot down your thoughts as we're going through this. At least write down the questions that I'm asking you so that you can reference them later. Because again, this is not going to be a big thing, or this is not going to be something that you're just going to do in this next hour and have this all figured out. But when you think about finding a way forward, what is it that you most want in that image, whatever it is you imagine? Let me tell you what happens. Every time that I am in a room of bereaved parents and I ask this question, 99% of the time, what people put out is a feeling. The number one response that I almost always hear is peace. I will also hear words like hope or love. And I just always found it interesting that it's a feeling that people want. And that makes the concept of creating a life after loss a little bit easier to define. So at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what your life looks like. We can't have our child back physically, right? Which is the only thing that we really want. But what we can do that can really make a big impact for us is determine how we want our life to feel. Because how does your life feel right now in the midst of grief? I'm guessing it's pretty messy. It's chaotic. It's sad. It's lonely. You probably feel pretty destroyed and broken. Um, and those are all pretty normal things, but note that they're all things we feel, right? In this moment. And it's the opposite, maybe, of what we want to feel. Here's where your piece of paper will come in handy because I want you to start sort of a free flow of thoughts. And Mel, you're right. Positive focus. That's a good one too. More normalcy. That's good, Christy. I want you to think about a life that you can live and how does that feel, right? How would you want it to feel? What feelings need to exist in order for you to show up and engage with that life? What would make it easier for you? As you're doing this exercise, don't try to organize your thoughts, right? Don't try to put them into buckets, but just let everything come out in free flow. How is it that you want this life to feel? You will likely find that you are expanding on some of these ideas as you're putting stuff down. It kind of turns into a little bit beyond feeling words, but that's okay. So if you're one of those people who wanted peace, right, you might recognize the things that are not peaceful for you right now. You might note the added stressors that you deal with every day that really need to be peeled away in order to make this easier for you to show up. You might note relationships in your life that feel hard, right? Maybe you're looking for peace from the constant what ifs and the whys and relief from the pain and suffering, right? Those are all big things. If you have a lot of anxiety and fear in this, you might recognize all the things that you can't do right now that you wish that you could do. You might want to bring things back to your life that you enjoyed before, that you know you would enjoy again, that you probably need to have in order to bring joy and grief together. Make this list your own, right? Write down whatever it is that comes up for you. You're the only one that's going to see it. If you want to keep this list going for a day or two, sometimes people will work on this over the period of a week. That's totally fine. This gives you a chance to really reflect pretty deeply on it. So take this with you. And the next step that you're going to go through once you've completed this list is we're going to look for themes. What stands out for you? What are the things that you can sort of group or classify together that will create that one feeling word or a short phrase that's a kind of that feeling phrase? Your goal is to identify the top 2 or 3 words that you can use to define the life that you can show up for and live. I'm going to share mine with you here for a second. Let me get a quick drink. I'm going to share my 3 words. And these are the words that I use all the time. And I think sometimes when I can share these with you, it can kind of help open your mind a little bit. My number 1, and these are not really in any order, number 1 is authenticity. I want to live a life that feels authentic to who I really am now, my true self, right? Not the conditioned version of me that existed before. I don't want to be on the hamster wheel of life trying to keep up with the Joneses, right? That is exhausting. It's not what I want. It's not what I need. It does not resonate with me anymore. I actively work on stripping away all of the things, all the conditioning, and really finding what resonates with me and what feels right, and then practicing doing that. Number 2 for me is balance. When I feel like authenticity requires balance. So when I feel something, I'm going to feel it, right? If I feel sad, I allow it. I give it permission to take up space. When I'm happy, I do that too. When grief shows up, I welcome it in like an old friend. I invite it to sit down. It's going to come in and it's going to stay as long as it wants. And I found that by not fighting against it, I'm actually going to move through that grief a whole lot faster than if I keep trying to push it out. For me, balance is really important. I know I cannot have life without also having grief because it's not normal to move through life without having that grief and remembering that your child died, right? In order for grief and life to coexist, I need balance. So I also, I need to share all of the space and the balance of these things, and I need to have a place where I have tools, right? A toolkit that helps me create this balance and kind of get to this space so that I can better manage all the things that start to come up in this experience. Number three for me, and maybe this is one of the more important words, is love. This is one that I chose for a lot of different reasons. First, this loss sent me on a spiritual journey. I have come to recognize through that everything in the afterlife is centered around unconditional love. And I really believe that our purpose in life is as simple as learning to love. Not only love those that are around us, but also learn to love ourselves. And that's not always easy, but it's what I want to try to do. And so for me, I've also noticed that every decision that I've ever made in my life, I can peel it back. And I've found that I either made the decision from a place of love or I made the decision from a place of fear. And so I'm actively trying to choose love over fear all the time. My son taught me unconditional love, right? My grief is my love. And to me, love just makes sense. I find funneling my grief into something more positive. This is kind of the way that I can do that. It will likely take you some time to hone in on and identify what your words are. Again, I would look for maybe 2 or 3 words that can really become helpful. So let's talk about how do these words help us rebuild this life. These words are going to become your guide. They literally will shine a light on your path forward. They're going to give you a crystal clear lens that you can look through that will help you evaluate every single thing in your life. These words will also highlight the grief work or your own inner work, the things that need to be done in order to help you reach that life and get those feelings that you want to feel, right? To have that be your life. So let me just quickly recap these questions so that you've got these and you can focus on these later. Step number 1, I asked you to think about life after loss. How does it feel? How do you want it to feel? Step number 2, I want you to identify the common themes that came up for you, right? Can you find 2 or 3 overarching words that feel most authentic to you, that really work for you and resonate? And then step number 3, what needs to change in order for you to feel those things or achieve those feelings? This is the big one. You're going to constantly be asking yourself this one question: does this help create the feelings that I want to feel? And you're going to apply it to everything, right? Does this event help me feel, and fill in your words? Does this relationship help me be my authentic self? Help me feel balanced? Does it help me feel loved? Does this thing help me feel more authentic, right? Achieve balance in my life or feel love in my life? And if the answer that you're giving yourself is not a definitive yes, then you have work to do. And there is almost always work to do. This work doesn't just mean you immediately write off everything that you didn't say yes to. That would be easy, right? That's kind of what we want to do. This is where you discover choice. This is where you can shine a light on the things that you can fix, and you can choose the things that you want and create that. So let me give you an example. Does this relationship with my best friend, Sally, does it help me be my authentic self, achieve balance, and feel love? If my answer is anything but yes, I need to dig into it. So the next question I'm going to ask myself is, what needs to change in order for my answer to be yes? And this is where you're going to decide what it is that you need from the relationship, whether it's something you're getting or not. You need to be really honest with yourself. A relationship takes 2 people, right? That means that things that need to change are not only things that you might need, but it's also about what they need from you or what you need to give to the relationship. So it takes both of you coming together with the same goal and the same effort. Let's just say that Sally's always been my best friend, and right now things are really awkward, right? They're uncomfortable. She maybe ignores my loss, she doesn't bring it up. I need this discomfort to go away. I need her to be able to talk about my son in the ways that we used to. I need to know that she is willing and able to be there for me in the ways that I might need her to be. From an authenticity standpoint, maybe I feel like I can't really show up in this relationship the way that I am now, as the person that I am now, right? Because she wants and expects me to show up the way that I used to. So I need to know that she can accept me for who I am right now. Now, as before, right, both Sally and I have to have skin in the game. And if this change is going to happen, right, if this future state is ever going to take place, I have to identify what I can do or what I need to do in order to take the next step. A big part of that is communication, right? This is often the hardest part. And we make assumptions that people should know what we want or what we need. A lot of times that's not fair because we don't even know what we want or need. So, again, we have to own the communication piece. We have to be willing to bring it up. I need to figure out what I need from her, and I need to communicate it in a way that's really clear and without any judgment. I also need to own my part because this isn't an attack, right? This isn't about placing blame. So, what I might say to her is something like, I know the loss of my son makes you really uncomfortable, makes me uncomfortable. You don't know what to say, right? You don't know how to act. You're afraid of upsetting me. When you don't acknowledge my grief, when you don't ask me how I am, when you don't check in with me, I feel hurt, right? I want you to be able to say his name. I react by taking a step back, right? I withdraw more in these situations. And when really what I want is a friend who can come in and sit down beside me, even though it's really uncomfortable. And I want somebody who's willing to figure this out with me and have those really hard conversations. That's the friend that I'm hoping that you can be for me now. Then I want you to tell them exactly how you would like for them to show up, right? Ask if it's something that they can do or if it's something they want to do. I always give people an out, but let them know that if they want this, then I need to know, what do you need from me, right? Let's both have an open conversation about expectations and needs and really hit a reset button, right? Let's clear the air, let's start fresh, and let's decide how going forward we are both going to show up for each other in the ways that we need. And from there, it's a matter of practicing it, right? I give Sally a chance to do exactly as we discussed, and then I do my best to show up exactly as I stated that I would. Now, that's a pretty perfect outcome, right? And they won't ever be perfect. Sometimes people won't show up in the way we need them to. Things will continue to be one sided. And you will recognize that there is no way that this relationship is going to help me achieve that feeling state that I'm trying to get to. At that time, you and Sally might decide that this is no longer a relationship that makes sense for you guys, or it no longer is the same relationship. Maybe you'll make changes. Maybe you'll end the relationship. Whatever you decide to do, know that that's okay. There's a lot of work in this, and I know how much energy it takes to have these conversations, to reset expectations, to form new boundaries, and especially to uphold those boundaries and keep them in place. I've also found that eliminating stress in my life, the stuff that I had control over, the stuff that I could influence, that goes a really long way in helping me to manage everything else that comes up. Another question that you can ask yourself related to that, and reflect on is, what things in my life am I just putting up with? What am I tolerating right now? What's my greatest source of stress? And there's often a lot of things in our life that we've come to tolerate. Maybe they were things before that we allowed in our life, and it was just easier to let it keep going, right? But now, when you are in grief, these things feel so much heavier. They compound our grief. They make it more stressful. Um, what are those things for you? Include anything that's cluttering your mind, draining your energy, things that you wish could just stop or go away. I'm going to share some examples so that you've got these as you're thinking through your list when you do this. You could put on this list things like incomplete tasks, decisions that you have to make that you maybe haven't been able to make yet, guilt that you carry, unmet needs that you have, frustrations, unresolved issues, behaviors of other people, boundaries that keep getting crossed, right? These are all things that might end up on your list in one way or another. Again, the things that you list guide the work that you can do to help yourself reach that more balanced state. You might not have the energy to do that work yet. You might not have the tools that you need to build that roadmap and sort of identify exactly what needs to do. But these things can shine a light on what that is. And then you can go out and find the things that help you make those changes. Again, our goal is to build a life that we can show up for, engage with, and live. It might seem like a lot of this is around regaining control, right? It's not really about control. Everybody wants to be in control. I know I was a big control freak before, and I still kind of struggle with that a lot of times, but everybody wants control back, right? We feel safe when we have everything under control. Our desire to be in that state of control, that comes from a place of fear. That desire is really doing that, acting out, trying to get control. Those are the things that we do to manage the fear that we're feeling or the anxiety. That's usually how it shows up. There's a lot of fear and anxiety in child loss. Also, just in grief in general, it's very normal. We couldn't stop the loss of our child, right? That feels like a loss of control. We also have all of these other losses that come after, right? Friends, family members, the loss of self, the loss of safety. Maybe you have financial losses and all of these other things that trickle down after you've lost your child. The emotional center of our brains are on overdrive. We feel completely out of control. When we get in this space, our thoughts, even the smallest thing that happens around us, we go to worst case scenario. We are imagining every possible catastrophe that could happen. And part of that is the trauma response, but it's all fueled by underlying fears. So, how do we tackle the fear? How do we manage the anxiety, the worry? First, what I need you to know is there are two types of fear. The first type is sort of that instinctive fear. It's healthy. It's what keeps us safe, right? It's the fear that is situational, right? Meaning that we naturally respond or we react to something that's scary or dangerous that's going on around us. The second type of fear is psychological. And this is the bucket that we usually find ourselves in. This happens when we give fear way too much power and we develop a fear of an actual situation. That means that when we think about the situation, even just the thought of it happening, it doesn't have to be happening, we become frightened. It's like a fear of something that might happen, right? This is the fear that normally people will think of as anxiety. It shows up a lot in child loss, right? It's that fear that we're going to lose another child, or another loved one is going to die, right? It's the fear that if we leave our house, we are going to run into the exact person that we don't want to see. It's the fear of what happens when I go out and I get emotional and I have a meltdown. We can only cope with things that are happening in this current exact moment. We don't have the ability to cope with things that are only happening inside of our head. When we keep focusing on the things that are outside of our control, right? Those imagined things, what might happen, our bodies have the same physical stress response, which is that fight, flight, freeze response, right? That survival mode. The problem is when something is imaginary, there's no signal that's being sent back to our brain telling the brain that the danger is over. So you continue to panic, and you live in that heightened state as long as you continue to think about it. And again, we're ruminating, right? We're thinking about these things over and over and over again. So, of course, we are re triggering ourselves. The more you think about it, the more you fuel that fear, the more that physical response is going to follow. Your power comes from your ability to recognize when your fears are psychological and to remind yourself that's not real. You are okay, and you can stop that spiral. There's an exercise that you can do, um, and I sort of call it the circle of control. What you're going to do is create a circle. It's sort of a series of circles, and it's got 3 layers. So at the very, very center, then we've got a circle that's a little bit bigger, and then we've got the biggest circle on the outside. So at the very center, those are all the things that you can control. So when you think about a situation, you're going to write down in that center things that you can control. Um, Things that go in that bucket are usually things like you have control over your words, your actions, your reactions, the decisions, your mindset, all of those things, even your thoughts. Some of you might question that. I know that it takes a lot of practice to get to a state where you can sort of manage your thoughts or control your thoughts, but you have complete control over all of that. So if you notice in that middle circle, it's really all about internally, right? What can I do? The bigger circle, kind of in the middle, that's the next layer out, that is your circle of influence. That means what are the things that you have only a tiny bit of control over, not really control, more things that there's something you can do that maybe helps push it in a certain way, right? We want to spend a little bit less of our time focused on the things that we put in that circle because we don't have as much control. There's things that are going to happen that are outside of our control. And by worrying on them, we're just creating, again, more struggle for ourselves. In that circle of influence, you're going to find the things that you put down usually pertain to other people, right? Other people's words, other people's thoughts, other people's reactions, right? We can't decide or we can't influence, we can only influence what their decisions are, what they think of us, those kinds of things. We can't control it. When we move then to the biggest circle, that kind of outside circle, that encompasses everything else, right? That is our circle of concern. And so that's where we put things that are completely outside of our control, things that we can't even influence, right? There are things that are going to happen regardless. And they tend to be things that we worry about a lot. And again, it's sort of a waste of our time and energy. Things that go in that bucket are usually things that happened in the past, the weather, right? The state of the world around us, could be politics, could be the economy, right? Anything else that goes there is whatever it is that you can't control in that situation. A big one that I want you to put in that box is death. We have no control when it shows up, right? And so why continue to worry about the potential of losing somebody else when really we have no control? So the key learning here is that when we focus on the things that we cannot control, we let them control us. And that fear takes over. And if we instead shift our focus and our energy to the things that we can control and to the things that we can influence, then we feel more empowered and we can respond to things that happen in life, maybe in the way that we want to versus the way that we just immediately respond. We can also dig into our fear a little bit too. We have to really understand it in order to overcome it. So, what to do is list your fears, right? Examine it, dig into it, do your best to understand it. And what we're going to do then is look at what are the ways that we can reduce the likelihood of that happening. We, either us or somebody else, what are the things that we can do in the moment when that does happen? So let me give you an example here. In this process, you're going to list one of your fears. And for this fear, I'm going to use the fear of every time one of my kids has a fever, I immediately think it's porphyria and that one of my kids could die, right? Because that's what happened with Cameron. So the next step would be to get really specific about what I'm afraid of. Because what I typically find is it's not just that one thing. There's all these other layers to it, right? And I want you to think about what is your worst case scenario, because you need to define what that is in order to figure out how to maybe counterbalance that. So for me, every time one of my kids spikes a fever, it triggered me, right? And as I dig into that fear, I notice that that really stems from a loss of confidence in my ability to handle somebody being sick, right? To know what to do in the moment. Um, it didn't work well when Cameron was sick that last time. So I go to worst case scenarios, right? And then I question, is this normal sick or is this porphyria, right? Is this just an ear infection? Is this no big deal or is this a really big deal? And because I didn't know before, how could I know now, right? There's vulnerability in there too around really knowing I have no control over the outcome and all I can do is influence it. And I don't feel like I have much influence, right? I also fear being the expert in the room, which I always am, especially when it comes to porphyria. People don't know it, even doctors don't know it. And so, me, who is not an expert, is suddenly the expert in the room. And so, once you've defined all of those fears for you, I want you to shift your focus to what can I do right now that can prevent it from happening, or at least decrease the odds that it will happen, right? Even if we can only reduce that by like 1%, what could you do or what could somebody else do that can help reduce that likelihood? I spent a lot of time learning about porphyria. What are the signs and symptoms? What are the triggers? How do I manage those? And I overmanage those. I reached out and had a conversation with the American Porphyria Foundation. I have talked to porphyria experts. I know that they have doctor kits, ER kits, right? Things that I can put together and carry with me at all times so that when I end up in a situation, if I end up in a situation where I have to be the expert in the room, I can hand this person a packet with everything they need to know, and it takes the pressure off. I also knew I needed tools that would help me stay calm in the moment. I needed to be able to reassure myself that this is different or it could be different. And when I had more knowledge and information, then I could more easily get to that space, right? Just because he died doesn't mean the same thing is going to happen to my daughter. I have supports in place. My daughter's pediatrician, her cell phone number is in my phone, and she responds instantly, right? I have people that I can reach out to that will help sort of ease my anxiety and help talk me off, whatever crazy ledge I'm standing on. It doesn't make it go away, but it does lessen the impact because I have a plan. Then I want you to capture the things that you can do in the exact moment if your plan starts to go awry, right? What can I do to fix it? What can get you back on track? For me, like I said, I can keep that ER file, that doctor file on hand. I can have it in multiple locations. It's always accessible with the information that we need. I can call or text my pediatrician. I reach out and I start using all of these tools in my toolkit that kind of bring me back to a state of calm. And I keep looking for cool tools that I can add to that toolkit. This little exercise, like I said, it's a great way to create a plan. Having a plan can go a long way in helping you quiet that voice inside your head that takes you to the worst possible place. It helps you imagine, right, the worst case scenario. Just take yourself through it. What am I really afraid of? What can I do to decrease the likelihood that it could happen, even if it's only by 1%? And then if it does happen, what am I going to do in the moment? What can I do to help release some of the stress and get myself back on track? It sounds cheesy, but thinking through that plan really can reduce the fear that we carry. Before we wrap up today, I want to share some tools that you can use that are what I call in the moment tools. And these are things you can put in your toolkit. These are things you can use when your grief, your fear, your anxiety really gets charged up. In that natural trauma response, the part of our brain that is most active is the primitive part, right? Which is our fear center. We live in that hyper vigilant state of fear, and survival mode is in full swing. We are engaged in fight, flight, freeze. How does that look and feel? Panic attacks, extreme anxiety, general fear, PTSD symptoms, emotional overwhelm. Those are all the things that we feel. Essentially, what happens is our entire nervous system gets disrupted, and our brain tells the rest of our body we are in danger. And this biological response can make it really hard to do things like go to the grocery store, talk to a friend or a family member, go to a doctor's appointment, maybe watch a TV show. And so, anytime we are triggered, we feel like we lose control. And the way that we regain our control is by grounding ourselves in the present moment. And when we're grounded, that means that our thoughts aren't in the past. We're not focused on the future. We are aware of what's going on right now around us, and we are only in this moment. I'm going to share with you guys some grounding exercises. These can be used, like I said, to sort of bring your physical, emotional, mental energy back into check. Being grounded helps you organize your thoughts. It helps you be able to think through things. You can relax out of that hyper stressed state. You can regain your focus and really help yourself sort of feel like you're regaining a little bit of your control. One of the most common techniques that you're going to hear people talk about is breath work. There's a lot of breath work out there. This means controlling your breathing. When our brains, what they do is they take in data from the world around us. And when we are in danger, what happens to our breathing? It accelerates. We take short, quick breaths. And what that does is that feeds our muscles, that feeds our brain and our body with oxygen. So we're pumped with energy so that we can either fight or we can flee, right? We can run away. And controlling our breath in that moment helps us to slow things back down and tell our brain that that danger is open or that danger is over, and we can sort of go back to our resting state. So the first one I want you to know is box breathing. This is sometimes called other things. I call it box breathing because you really can imagine this box. And we've got 4 sides, right? The top, side, down, up. And it's just literally going to take you back and forth. And what you're going to do is you're going to align your breath to that movement. So you're going to start by, you're going to inhale for 4 seconds. I always use 4 seconds. If you are really in a heightened state, you can expand that time, hold it for 5 or 6 seconds. What this does is this puts a little bit of extra pressure on your lungs, which just will make the messages back to your brain a little bit more intense. It'll make it kick in a little bit faster. So breathe in for 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3, 4. Breathe out, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, 1, 2, 3, 4. And you literally just keep doing that and follow yourself around the box, right? Inhale 4, hold 4, exhale 4, hold 4. Do that as long as you need to. That, again, the more you do it, the longer you do it, you're going to feel your body start to come back down. Another great way that you do this, again, this is all about using our 5 senses, sending our brain with as many different inputs that we can that will tell it the danger's over. I call this one 5 senses. Some people will do this a little bit differently because they will count it down. I try to make things as simple as possible because when you are in these moments, you don't want complexity. So when I start to feel heightened, a lot of times what I'll do is I will just stop and I will just take a deep, slow breath, right? And I will just center myself for a second. And then I will go through my 5 senses. And I will start with, what can I see? And this is where a lot of people will like count, right? Find 5 things that you see and 4 things you hear. I literally just say, what can I see? And I'll just look around the room and I'll say, I can see my computer. I can see my phone. I can see my Play-Doh container, right? I'm literally just looking around and I'm just acknowledging all of the things that I can see. After a couple seconds of that, I'll shift and I'll say, okay, what can I hear? And then I tune in. and I'm listening, right? What can I hear? Maybe I can hear my dog outside. I can hear the air conditioner, right? Whatever it is that you can hear, tune into that. And then shift. What can I smell? A lot of people will keep like a candle or something nearby. I've also seen people create a little baggie that they can keep with them so that they have something in there to smell, something in there to taste, something in there to feel. That way, wherever you are, you have things that sort of become your go to. Again, what can you taste, right? I have water. Take a drink of it, taste it. What can you feel, right? I've got Play-Doh here. I might feel the Play-Doh is squishy. I might just hold my phone, right? Just feel the case. I might just feel the table, feel your clothes, right? Feel something around you, notice the texture. All of these things bring you back to this center present moment and help you calm down. Another thing that I will do is I like to go outside and do this. If it's during the day, I always start again with that deep breath, release it. I'll feel the sun on me, right? Or I'll feel the wind blowing. And I'll just focus on the fact that there's silence, right? There's nobody around me right now. There's just silence. If it's nighttime, I might look up at the sky and I'll just take in that it's dark, that it's quiet. And that just gives me a few seconds to recenter and kind of bring myself back to a more calm state. There's one more that I want to share with you, and this one's more of a pressure point. I mentioned that when we're in this state, our brain is sending chemicals and hormones through our body, and it's telling us that we're in this heightened state. There's a lot of, they usually call them acupressure points, that can help to sort of kick in some other more positive chemical reactions in your brain. One of them that I do is with the thumb. And what you do is you just literally start squeezing the top of your thumb, right? Just keep squeezing. It doesn't have to be really, really hard. It's enough that you know that it's happening. And you'll just sort of stay in this state for maybe like 20 seconds. Just keep squeeze and let go, squeeze and let go, squeeze and let go. And then when you're done with that, you flip to the side and you put pressure on each side of your thumb and you squeeze it. Doesn't have to hurt, but you're going to give it a good squeeze and you're going to maintain that squeeze and you're going to keep holding it. And what happens is this is sending signs again back to your brain that we're going to change that chemical composition. And it's just another one of those things, right? You could be out in public and you can literally just be squeezing your thumb. So give those things a try. I always tell people, practice these techniques in the moments that you don't need them. Maybe in the really dumb things that happen in your life where you're like, I'm not really overwhelmed, but it's stressful. Because the more that you practice them, the more you're going to master them, the more they're going to be accessible to you in the moment when you really need them. And the other thing that I want you to start to practice is compassion for yourself. Love yourself, right? When you feel these things happening, when your grief shows up, just have compassion for yourself and give yourself grace for the things that you can't do. Rebuilding life after loss, it isn't something that we do on a weekend, even in a few weeks, right? It can take years to work through the grief, to integrate it into who you're becoming, to make sense of everything that you've experienced and everything that's happened to you, and to get to a place where you really have the energy and the ability to create the change that you want and need. And this rebuilding, it's an ongoing thing, right? Grief evolves. We are going to continue to evolve this life to match whatever it is that we are wanting to feel. We aren't perfect. Things rarely go according to plan, and we will have moments that we just can't, right? That's a real thing in this. And all of that is okay. If you are a bereaved parent who's looking for some support and some encouragement, and you want some help to figure out what comes next and figure out how to take that next step, I do offer a program that you may be interested in. I'm going to go ahead and add a slide here that you guys can take a look at. So Living with Grief is designed to walk beside you in your grief experience and provide you with the tools and support that you need to rebuild that life that you can live, right? Our goal in this, in healing, is never to stop grieving. It's about learning the things that help us grieve more confidently in a more healthy, balanced way. I want to help you build a life that you can live, right? It's about finding a way to move forward with this. As I mentioned earlier, my grief journey shifted into being my healing journey. And it's what I do actively every single day. I practice using the tools and strategies that I've learned. I continue seeking help from others, right? Other tools that can help me live authentically, maintain my balance, and really help me continue that bond with my son. Those three feeling words, right, that I shared at the beginning, they come into play every single day for me. So on the screen here, you're going to see what you get in my Living with Grief program. More workshops like this. I add workshops every month. They are on demand, so they're available to you when you're ready. Guided small group discussions every week. We meet in small groups on Zoom. We talk about our grief. These are uplifting discussions. These are things that my members look forward to every single day or every single week. This is the thing that kind of keeps them going. That's the feedback that I get. We have a private Facebook community with others on the same healing journey. You have connection with people who get it, people who are on the same path. And then we've got all this healing strategies and content that is out there. So I really do my best to help figure out exactly where you are right now and give you the things that can help you take that next step forward. This is a membership program. I do offer the first month for free. I'm sorry, at a discounted rate. The first month is 50% off. After that, when members come in, my goal is really to have them spend that first month. I want them trying the tools. I want them experiencing it. I want them getting into it and digging into it and seeing if it's a fit, because fit is really important in this. So find the things that fit for you, find the things that resonate with you, keep doing those. This program is month to month, no commitment, cancel anytime. The link at the bottom will take you over there. You can sort of see some more details on the program, some testimonials. There's a link to register. And again, you're welcome to reach out to me anytime. I will share with you anything that I can do to sort of help you through this journey. I want to thank you guys so much for tuning in today. I hope that you're walking away with some helpful tools, and I wish you guys all the best on your journey. Thanks.